So welcome everybody. Let's get started. It's 9 o'clock now. What I'm gonna do first is actually, since we don't have that many people online, if you guys want to ask a question, you can just uh, unmute your mic and just ask the question, or feel free to even raise your hand if you want to, or just type in the question into the chat session area. Alrighty, so what we're gonna do first is review some of the items from goals 1 and 2, which is the items from last week. And then we're going to jump into some items for goals 4, 5, and 6, which are items from or for this second week. And then we'll go into some miscellaneous items. First off, with the debugging assignment, I am almost finished grading everyone. By tomorrow, you should see your grade out there. And then the other grades for the other assignments normally follow fairly quickly. So I may finish everything tomorrow. If you do have any questions on any of the assignments from week 1, then please let me know. What I do want to do is tell you that if some of your grades aren't coming out like you would like it to be in week 1, then please get with me. Uh, I want to make sure you understand, or you need to understand, or you need to make sure you understand a lot of the materials from week 1, because again, everything builds on top of each other. And I think I might have used this example before, where we're teaching you about characters, about letters. Then we teach you how to write words. Then we teach you how to write sentences. And from sentences, we teach you how to write a paragraph. And then we teach you how to write a story from there. And if you missed items from week 1, then that would be like missing sentence. You would be missing the information that you should have learned on how to write sentence structures. That makes sense? Hey, Tim, my best advice would be to just get with me, and we need to review things from there if you felt like you struggled. I'm going to go over some things tonight, but not anything in detail. Russell, you too, if you need some help or you have some questions on the debugging assignment, just please get with me. I'll be online probably till 12 tonight, and then all day tomorrow as well. Okay, so the first thing on our document here, please, there's some of you who still have not gotten me your GitHub account information. If you have not gotten that to me, then please get that to me. Otherwise, I can't grade your work. Only items that I will be able to grade are items that are the assignments that are at the end of the week, which are the ones that you actually turn into FSO. All the other ones that are delivered through the GitHub, um, you're going to have to get me your GitHub information before I can grade your work, obviously. And then make sure I have your instant messenger IDs as well. Please send that as soon as possible if you hadn't sent it to me yet. If we've communicated already via instant messenger, then I already have your ID. If you find that there's some issues and you don't see me online when I should be, please send me an email at that point in time. I know there's some quirkiness with some versions of iChat and iMessages. So again, if you don't see me online, make sure you at least fire an email off to me so I can get back with you, and make sure you send me your ID again if we hadn't spoken online yet. On the debugging assignment, um, some things that I noticed that I wanted to bring up, and then I'll go over a couple of other little things on the debugging side in just a sec here. But the first thing is, whatever. So the first thing is, I noticed that sometimes when, again, it may not apply to all of you, but on some of the items or some of the ones that I already graded, a lot of times there are additional code in there that wasn't in the original code. And what I would highly recommend is that if you are troubleshooting code and you're troubleshooting, say, logical errors, if what you're trying to fix doesn't work, then change the code back to the original. Otherwise, you're literally creating more work for yourself, and the debugging assignment already has enough um, issues with it. So if you add more in there, you're just adding more complexity to this assignment than there should be. Um, it seems as though there's, well, make sure that when you look at your code too, that all the brackets are in place. A lot of times there's, well, in the assignment, there are brackets that are missing. You need to make sure you find where that bracket actually goes and put it into place. And make sure you know for sure, because if you put it in the wrong place, you may be closing a function off early, or you sort of just cutting it off before it has the opportunity to run all the other code that's in there. You don't want to put the ending bracket in early because it literally closes a function at that point in time. Console log everything. And you know what? I'll go over that in a second. I went over it pretty extensively on console logs in the debugging video. So if you're still struggling with that, please take a look again at that video, because console logs are so important in this class. It's literally one of the only tools that really help you debug logical errors. And if you don't become close to mastering how you use it, then you're going to struggle in this class. And a lot of the assignments will take you a whole lot longer than it needs to. So I would say, again, if you are struggling with console logs, then jump on it right away. Even to the point of, if you have to ask me questions about it, please get with me on it. But take a look at the videos first before you start asking me questions, and then we can talk after that too to clarify things. Okay, Katie, you asked that question about you have problems about where to console log. This is the assignment. Now, I'm not going to put the original or the fixed code up here because I did that one time and it was on the video, and students fixed their debugging assignment by copying what I had online. So sorry, guys. All you get is the broken code. First thing you need to realize when you look at your code, and you need to start looking at, is, well, first you fix all the syntax and the runtime errors, right? Those are the errors that show up in your console. So you want to fix those first. And then you want to figure out where this program actually starts. I mentioned last week, and I sort of harped on it for a little bit, and I don't know if some of you caught it or did not catch it. I kept stressing that the Dual 1 assignment was really, really important. And I can tell by some of the questions I got and some of the how some of the grading actually turned out that some of you didn't take me seriously and didn't necessarily review the Dual 1 a lot. I gave you the code, and I know some of you just turned that in, which is fine. But the idea behind making that assignment so easy was that I wanted to first teach you how a lot of the programs in JavaScript were laid out. Um, if I asked 10 of you where this program actually starts, the majority of the students that were asking questions this week couldn't answer where that started. And I outlined that pretty good in that Dual 1 assignment. So the way JavaScript works is that it comes through here and it executes the self-executing function, right? The closing brackets of this is all the way at the bottom. So that closes off the JavaScript program. And then at the top here, from that var line 5 to line 8, we have the global variables, right? So JavaScript comes in here and it just reads these things. And it creates a little storage that says, okay, this JavaScript program wants me to create a little storage called current search. So it creates that, and then it inside of it, it puts this little what is this, a space or no? Yeah, no space. So it's just a null value that's in here, but it's just setting up the shell for us to be able to use this current search later. So it reads this and just stores it in memory. And then it comes down here in JavaScript programs. Again, you'll see global variables at the top, and then you'll see functions that start after that. Okay, a function, if you look at this variable at the top, we have var results div equals, and then whatever you have to the right, doesn't matter. Well, guess what? Look at the function here. Function, we have var validate equals. And this one just happens to have a function behind it. So anytime I call validate, it just runs the code behind here. What I want to make sure you know and understand is that this variable at the top here, results div, is no different than this var validate. Pretty much does the same thing. It just creates the variables and then does nothing after that. So this function, when it comes through as a pass for the first pass of this program, it doesn't even care really what's in here. It just knows that it needs to set up a variable called validate. So it sets that up, and then guess what? Passes all that code, and then it goes to the next function, which is the search function. Right? So it goes to the search function, does the same thing. Sets up a var search equals, and all JavaScript knows at that point in time is, hey, when somebody calls search, I'm going to run this function. But for now, I'm just creating a variable called search, and I store it in memory, and it doesn't do anything else. Then it jumps down to the next function, reads this, stores it in memory, does the same thing. This is just another block of code, just another function called show matches. And then we get down here to the bottom of the program. That's where the program starts. If you look back at the videos for Dual 1, the program starts at the bottom too. So when we get down here, I put this line in here that the line directly below is correct. Basically, you don't have to do anything with this because some of the items I didn't necessarily want you to worry about because it may confuse you more, but you know what this is, or you should know what that is, right? It's just a variable again, just like the top. But this variable happens to store the search input. Search input's all the way at the top here as a variable. And all that does is when somebody types in an item in the search field at the top, it grabs this value. And so if I type JAVA for Java in the search block, this query at that point in time should show me what the user typed in. So knowing that, now this console wasn't here before. That console wasn't there. What I would do is I would want to validate this. I would want to validate everything in my program because I don't necessarily want to assume anything. So I would put a console log here with the query variable in it, because whatever's in here, I want to see it come out. I want to see it displayed. Aaron, you have a question? Go ahead and turn your mic
I
on.
did. I was curious. Up at the top when you were setting up your global variables, and it didn't trip me up as far as the exercise is concerned, but I just was wanted to kind of know your thoughts on it. So you have just the one var keyword, and then you have all those global variables. How
Right,
come you didn't put a var in front of each of them? I see that there's the comma,
right.
but is there a reason you separated them out
Well,
on different lines
there's
and
two ways to do it. One would be doing it this way, and the other one would be to put the var in front of it.
then the
But
semicolon?
yeah, but then if I do that, I have to put the semicolons in the back.
So
So
is there
you
a particular reason you do it that way?
no, just a preference.
Okay, I just was curious. Thank you.
Okay. Not a problem. Uh, hey Elizabeth, get with me too after, and we'll discuss your questions. Okay, so on the bottom here, so what I did here was put in this console log again because I want to validate everything and not assume anything. And so I'm validating here what the user typed in. Now, this should print out or output something all the time. And if it doesn't, then something might be wrong with something on the back end of this variable statement. But if something prints out here, then it moves on to the next step, which is this function called validate. So this is a function call, and it's passing in this variable query into it. And so what I would do is go to the validate function up at the top here. This line wasn't here too. What I want to do is it called this and it's passing the information in. It's called query. I want to be absolutely sure it's coming in here and it's at least starting inside this validate function. So I would put in a console log, and you can put in anything in the string. This is the sort of the breadcrumb piece that I was mentioning before in the debug video, to just put some kind of string in here to let you know that when the program's running, that it's running down a path that you think it should be running. Like I know it should have come in to validate here because that's what was being called down here at the bottom. So validate that, make sure it's okay. So now you know how to console log. Now I know I do get some questions. Hey, Hey, Jason or Tim, if you guys have your mic on, could you just mute it for now? If you have a question, just unmute. I'm getting background noise. Okay, so I had some questions on how do I know where to console log? Because what a lot of people do is they'll take this console log and they'll console log it here. What what do you think that would do if I left the console log here? Anybody have any ideas? No, the console log would actually, it wouldn't be undefined. If you follow the program, look what's happening here, right? It runs this statement, var query, and then what does it run next? It runs a validate function, right? So now, logically, it jumps all the way back up here and starts running this validate function. If anywhere in the code here I have an error, guess what? This never outputs. That makes sense? It's only in this program, it's just taking one step at a time. And again, the error would mean that the ball game's over, the program stops. Okay, so this is a reason why if you're console logging out a variable, you console log it out right away. Don't necessarily wait till you run through your whole function because something may never print out if you have errors. Okay, so now in the validate function, why would I put the validate here? Why don't I put it at the bottom? Right here. Katie asked the question if you're building your program, should you keep console logging as you go? You could, but the console log is mainly for debugging. So, and validating. So a lot of times when I do program, I would, if I was programming down here, I would validate this query just to make sure I'm not making any assumptions. But I wouldn't necessarily put this console log in here. This console log that's just a string, because that, again, when I console log out strings, I'm just kind of leaving a path or marking my path of where I'm at any point in time, because I need to know that this program's running and operating correctly. So I put my console log here at the top because I'm just trying to validate that it's inside this validate function. That's all I'm putting that console log in there for. No other reason. I just want to make sure it's in here. And you know what? When it's in here, a lot of times, if this outputs, then it just drops down to the next line, right? And then it runs this, which is a while loop. Now, I may not console log everything out in here. I may skip a step and maybe put a console log here. So I'm going to put after first while loop. Again, all I'm trying to do is see if my program gets down here. If it doesn't get here, what do you think? Where do you think the issue is? Anybody have any ideas? Right, Tim, in the loop. Right? If I output this and it prints out in the console, and I put this in here, and that doesn't output anywhere, that means the error is in here somewhere. See, so at least now I narrowed it down to really these two lines. It's better than guessing. Now from here, I would maybe throw some console logs in here, and if this was an error, I would throw a console log in here that says inside of while loop. And guess what? If this outputs, then this while with the conditional inside of it might be okay. But I just want to make sure first that I want to try and break that code right there. And all this code is trying to do is this. It's just looking to see if there's a white space at the beginning of the query or the word. Basically, just checking if a user types in a word like Java, but they put a space in the front of it. I want to check to see if the space exists there, and then I want to take it out. That's basically what this is doing. So if this console log never outputs, guess where the error is? Right inside that while loop somewhere. Does that make sense? Is everybody else confused? I only got 2 yeses. Okay. So guess what? That's what you're going to do through your whole program. That's what you need to do to try and catch the logical errors. You need to, the console log, the way I just showed you here, again, we're just using strings, right, to kind of mark where we are and mark where we've been, just to try and narrow down which line of code might be giving us issues. Um, you're going to do that through the whole program. So using strings and using console logs where you output variable information. Like I would want to console log this just so I can see if the correct changes were made. Right? This is console logging out a variable. You only have console logging out variables, or you console log out a string. So I console log out this variable because here what I want to test is that if I type in space JAVA into the search, I want to see and console log this out to make sure it removed the space. So I would do things like this and to validate. So if I'm programming, I would put that in there just to test things out to make sure it's okay. Any questions? Now, another thing inside of the program, you saw a lot of equals and triple equals and that kind of thing. There was also double equals, right? What I would do and what I'm encouraging a lot of students to do is that it's best to use the triple equals versus the two equal signs together. Only because the double equals can fool you a lot of times, where the triple equals really means that if something's equal to something, um, then do something with it. For instance, if I had this is a string number one equals double equals the number one, this would be true. If I had a number one equals to a number one, that would also be true. But if I had a string equal and use a triple equal signs, and I want to check to see if it's equal to the number one, well, guess what? That's false. Now, if your intentions are where you don't necessarily worry about what type of the types that are being compared, like here is a string compared to a number. If you don't really care about it, then go ahead and use the double equals. But it's always easier to just use the triple equals. Hey, Justin, I think everybody
Mhm.
just heard you, or whoever just jumped online. All
Oops.
right.
Oh, mute.
Alrighty, so then we have here the number one triple equals the number one, and then that one that would always be true as well. Any questions? Does that help with the debugging a little bit more? Yes, Tim, that's what you would do. Tim was asking if the general process is to find out where the program starts and then console log throughout the rest of the code. And that would be the process that you would use. That's why it's so important to know where that program actually starts. Um, Again, you don't necessarily need to know everything about all this coding, but but you know where and how a function should be set up, right? You know how a function is set up and how it should be opened and closed. So that's really all you worry about at that point in time. And then when you start breaking it down into pieces, well, guess what? We went through while loops. So you can look at this while loop and try to just troubleshoot that little piece. Now you might have forgot what something like cart at does. Well, in that point in that when you get to cases like this, then you just search. A lot of times I'll just type in JavaScript space cart at, and you'll see information for cart at, or I'll just go to dochub.io. The other site that's really good is the W3 Schools. I like using that one as well. Let's see here. Um, Katie, I'm not really sure I understand your question on what do you mean by program. The program to me is that whole JS file, right? The program in that context is the whole JS file. Yeah, Tim. Tim said just scanning for errors equals bad news and a lot of time. That's exactly right. That's why I stressed many times to use console logs all the time. And you need to become pretty efficient using it. Otherwise, it will become painful. And as you get into some of these other programs that are coming up, it'll even become more painful. So if you like pain, then don't use console log. Okay. Also, now, as a hint, coming up on week 2, if you feel like you're missing something, like you're still unsure about functions, still unsure about maybe a while loop or a for loop, make sure you go back, even if there's a lot of information this week. Um, let's look at that real quick. So even if there's a lot of information this week, we have this, all this right here. If something is still fuzzy, then you need to go back. If functions are fuzzy, if returning something from a function is fuzzy, if passing an argument into a function is fuzzy, go back to the videos and or start asking us questions, because everything's stacking on top of each other again. It would be just like the scenario I used of you're trying to write a story when you're fuzzy about writing a sentence. So we need to make sure you know how to write sentences. And sometimes you may not even know that you might be fuzzy in something. But when you get down into these assignments, Duel 3, we have the guessing game, we have a form validation, and then we got the midterm. If you're fuzzy or if you're taking like a tremendous amount of time when you get into those, then you're probably missing something. And we need to figure out what that something is so you can move on. Uh, Otherwise, I can tell you, you may spend 10 times as much time that's on some of these assignments. So make sure you understand everything that we just went through. And if not, review it, review it, review it. It's just reps. Just get your reps in to understand this. If you need more clarification, then just get with me. Now, let me finish up this document first, and then we'll get into the second week. I still notice that, and I can tell that some of you are not reading in detail. Some of you are just skimming. Therefore, you're not delivering some of the things that I'm asking for. Make sure you read everything, read it slow, and then use your instructions and use the rubrics as your checkoff list. Because, well, if you don't, you're going to be missing something. So use those. I can't stress it enough. You're going to hear me say it every week because it's that important. And a lot of times people will get point deductions off because they just did not read the rubrics or just didn't pay attention enough to the instructions. And just, I can tell a lot of people would just read it one time and then sort of interpret what they think they read, and therefore they deliver something that is not necessarily correct. In programming, there's 1,000 different ways to skin the cat, but we are looking for specific things in the programs. So every month, I normally hear somebody say, well, the output looks like your output, and therefore I should get all the points. No, that doesn't work here. Okay, because what I'm trying to teach you is to understand some of the details, and therefore you need to use the details that I'm trying to teach you to produce the results that we want. And it just basically comes down to when you get out of here, somebody's going to give you specifications on how you need to actually program something. If you get into some larger programs where there's project managers and that type that are involved, and they're going to say program this in this method and use these parameters, and they don't necessarily want you to come back delivering something other than that. It would be like building a house and you coming back and said, well, here's the picture of the house you said you wanted. but yet the whole inside of the house does not meet the specs at all. Instead of having 5 bedrooms, you only gave me 3. You understand? Does that make sense? So I don't necessarily care. The outside of what you deliver and what it shows on the screen is way easier to produce than it is to show me that you know the skill set that we're trying to teach you. So again, don't don't give me a 3 bedroom house when I'm asking for a 5 bedroom. It's not that hard. It's just reading and then using this instructions and the rubrics as a checkoff list. That's all I'm trying to get at. Don't wait to the last minute. I know some people didn't take me seriously last week, and unfortunately paid the price for that. I mean, think about it. Look at all the stuff that was due, and you had to review. It's a lot of information, and some people came to me on Thursday and Friday, basically saying they're starting, and all I could do is giggle inside. And I know some of you guys are giggling now too, because there is no way to start off on a Friday and thinking you're going to finish on Saturday. So, one hint for this week is that we do have less assignments here, and then it then tapers off. Okay, so here's week 3 and here's week 4. Now, I did see Katie mention one tip here in week 2. Where's week 2? This is week 2. So in week 2, we have goal 4, 5, and 6. Really, 6 is just a midterm. Now, notice that goal 6 is weighted pretty heavy. It's 30% of your grade. So make sure, if anything, you get this done. Um, you may still need to understand the items that you're learning in the assignments, say for this dual game and for the guessing game. You're going to need to know items in there to produce the item for the midterm. Now, there's no tricks in the midterm. It's everything that you guys have here in week 1 and week 2 is what's in the midterm. Again, there's no punches being pulled, there's no tricks. You get to use the website, you get to use all the material to produce the results. Okay, so you have all the material in front of you. It's just a lot of information, and then you just need to know how to put the program together. Again, one thing you might want to do is go all the way back to the first one where I went through Duel 1, because I kind of talked through the logic on how to sort of put it all together. So again, when I go back to the scenario of we teach you words, we teach you alphabets, words, sentences, paragraphs, and then stories. I just in Duel 1, I'm kind of giving you how do I start this story and how do I write about it. It's sort of a high level view. So you're getting into that part where you have to write more code, and a lot of the code that we're asking you to write comes right off all the videos, and um, the book helps a lot too. But if you try to look for certain solutions on the web, you're going to be searching for a long time. Again, everything I'm giving you can be produced by looking at the videos and looking at some of the information in the book for how to produce certain things. Tim's asking if it pays off to go ahead and start working on goal 6 while going through the other tasks. I would say pull goal 6 out. Look at the requirements for goal 6 and then start. I mean, if you can put the shell in place from what you know so far from week one, then go ahead and put that shell together. But for the items that might be missing within the program or the shell that you're building, when you start going through goal 4 and goal 5, and you start learning about some of the requirements or some of the things that are required in the midterm, then you start implementing at that point in time. Yeah, Tim was also asking that he's asking about starting just with goal 6 because it seemed overwhelming when he got to goal 3, which is the debugging assignment. After spending a lot of time on the videos and the 1% activities, that goal 3 seemed overwhelming. But unfortunately, in that context, and in week 1, you almost had to go through all the videos and review everything in order to debug properly, because you get into things like loops and conditionals and functions and information being returned from a function. So you literally had to know some of that to debug properly. The second question is, can we go over the dot join? Hey, Tim, I'm not sure I understand that last question. Yeah, Katie, I understand. The videos do take a long, long time. Um, Unfortunately, I don't know any way around it. It's just a lot of content, a lot of information that needed to be taught in this class. Okay, you're talking about the debugging assignment to use the split versus the join. Is that what you're asking? Or do you know the difference between the split and the join? Because they're almost direct opposites. Yeah, all you needed to do was take the join out, the dot join, and put in a dot split. Yeah. Tell you what, get with me after this, and if you need to go through what the dot split is compared to the dot join, and we can review it then. I just need to move ahead a little bit because we only have 10 minutes left. Sorry, Tim. So just get with me, please. Okay. Items for 4, 5, and 6 for this week. Goal 4 is very, very important. Okay. Make sure you go through all the information there of basic objects, the DOM selectors. If I look at our outline here of the classes, objects is very important for you to learn. Yes, it's on the midterm, so make sure you understand what we teach in this object line item here. Introduction to the DOM, and under that is DOM selectors, traversing, manipulation. What that is look at the DOM, like when you look at a web page. Let's look at this Full Sail web page. The Full Sail web page is broken. I mean, you see everything here and it looks good. But what the DOM does is break everything here down into sort of more of a tree structure, so it's a little more manageable on how we as developers would see it. So for instance, if I brought up my inspect for console or my inspect in Chrome and I hit elements here, you can see here that if I open up, there's a head tag and the body tag. This is all the code sort of laid out that actually displays here at the top. But it's displayed more in, look at it more like a tree type structure. So it helps with us later, because when we look at the DOM here and we're looking at the DOM selectors and the DOM traversing in JavaScript, and later on too with jQuery, when you get into PWA2, all we're really doing is selecting something on the page. All we're doing is selecting something on this web page because we want to change it. We want to make it more interactive. Like what's happening on the Full Sail page here is the developer is targeting this whole block, this box here, and has a timer on it. And when the timer hits a time, it just switches the picture in here. So it's just targeting a little piece of the website. For those of you who know HTML and CSS, a lot of times it's just a div tag. So it's targeting it and changing the information. And basically, that's what a lot of the programs are going to do. And the items that you look at and the assignments that you have for this week, you target an item and then you do something with it. You target an item and you do something with it. So we have selectors, which are methods that help us to select something on a page. Traversing is, if I look at something here, traversing is, since it's in a tree structure, it allows me to go up and down in a tree. Where a selector, like for me, well, let's see. Let me give you an example here. If I open this div tag that says ID container in it, again, this is all just HTML. Some of you guys hadn't even had the HTML class yet, but don't worry about it. You're not going to look through all this really. The information and the code that we're going to give you is like way easier than looking at all this. But I just want to show you here that it's sort of a tree structure, because I opened up this div tag and then there's other items under here that allow me to click it and expand it. And so what I'm going to do here is, let's say I wanted to select something here. Let's say I wanted to select this item called your career, because what I want to do is just change it. I just want to change that text your career on it. Well, here's a trick. I target my ID there, my selector. I'm saying I want to select this ID called container. And then I jump down here and I teach you how to use traversing. Traversing again is going up and down a tree. So I'm telling this program that I want to target this your career, and you can see that every time I open up something, it opens up and it has other items in here. Now I know that this div tag right here is that your career. You see when my arrow is on the your career area and your career up here turns blue on that link. Um, what you're doing in JavaScript, again, if we wanted to create something like a dynamic menu, just say somebody clicked on something and our whole menu changed, and I wanted to change that your career to something like I don't know, let's learn surfing, learn about surfing. Ooh, I'm going to take some of these characters out because it won't let me see everything. But you see what happened here? I just changed out of nowhere. I changed a Full Sail website. Um, by just navigating or selecting something, traversing down the tree, and doing what this third thing is called. I manipulated that page. So you're going to learn how to do that in here. Is that cool? Now, I know some of you are thinking, well, what did I just do? I just changed a Full Sail website. That means I can go change anybody's site. But that would be true if I had full control of Full Sail. If if I jump out of here and refresh this page, this will change back. I just kind of temporarily went through how to make a change here, just so you can see what's happening. I can actually put my name up here. Let's go learn from Master Midomo. And there we go. I got my name in the Full Sail page. Is that kind of cool? That's the kind of things that you'll do as a developer for a dynamic page. If it's just a static page, well, JavaScript doesn't necessarily help you. Well, it will help you build that page dynamically, but it doesn't add a lot of interactivity to it. So you can learn selectors, traversing, how to change the page using manipulation. Events and handlers. Events are things like if I click on this link, it does something. That's an event. An event is if we, when we get into our goal 4 assignment, we're going to light up this fight button. So when I click on this fight button now, it'll change the numbers on the top here for the health. What you guys have so far is just an alert box. Well, we're going to convert that alert box and take the alert box out. And instead of the alert box, you're going to activate this event on this fight function. So now when I click on here, you can see the numbers changing at the top. So you're going to learn how to write the numbers up on the side. You're going to learn how to write this comment in here. You're going to learn how to update this round number. If I refresh here, you can see here it says clicks to start. If I click fight one time, that round number changes. Every time I click, it changes. So you're going to go through that when you do this dual 3 assignment. And then you're going to run through a guessing game. The guessing game is real simple, and it just simulates the old game that you might have played when you were little, when somebody said, guess what number I have," and they have their hand behind their back. That game sort of simulates things, but it's going to have you use things like the selector. You're going to select a place on the page where you're going to change the text. and you're going to use the DOM manipulation to write the text out to the page, and then you're going to use events, right? Because you're going to have to, a person's going to type in a number into a block, an empty field, and then they're going to press a button, and that button is again the event. Now the handler part is just a function. So in this case, when somebody clicks on the fight button, all it's doing is executing a function. I click on the function, the button again, it runs a function. I click it again, it runs the same function. So it's similar to how it was when you had the alert box. But here now, I mean, websites, you really never see the alert box pop up, right? We have to use more sophisticated things like a button like this and have it update right on a page. An alert box sort of is a box that pops up right on the front of this page. And then in goal 5, you're going to get into regular expressions. Regular expressions are pretty ugly things. This is a regular expression. Pretty ugly. Yes, Katie, in dual 3, you're going to use objects. Okay, so what the heck is this? That is something that you're going to have to learn how to read before you can get out of this class. I'm just joking. It's pretty ugly. But let me show you something here. If I ask you to, in a form, and in the form I want, or what you're going to want to do when you create a form for the website or a website is you're going to want to validate the fields, right? You're going to want to validate that if somebody types in an email address, that it at least follows some kind of format. If somebody types in a phone number, you're going to want to make sure it at least all the characters are either numbers or a dash, right? Or maybe parentheses. You don't want it to be necessarily alphabets. Um, if I ask you to write conditionals for a field that's supposed to have an email address in it, your code is going to be really long because you're going to have to say if the first character that I'm reading is a number, then have the user type it back in, or retype the whole line again. You're going to have a lot of if thens, a lot of conditionals throughout the whole program, and it could be a really long again piece of code. But what if I could just write something like this? And that if I write something like this, that if somebody types in an email address like any of these 3, then it'll pass. That's what regular expressions are. So even if they're ugly as heck, they help out a lot because as programmers, you just have to write less code. And so this regular expression it has a lot of videos in it, but it's good for you to know. One thing I can tell you is that when I look at this, it's not like I remember how this is all written, or am I going to try and write it from scratch. But it's good for you to be able to look at it and understand pieces and parts of it. Like if I look at maybe the back end of this, .coms, .infos, or let me do this. Here's an @ sign and here's an @ sign. And that @ sign saying, well, after the @ sign, here's the alphabets that I'll accept, and maybe even numbers as well. But basically, this is saying, hey, we'll validate this if it has an alphabet between A and Z that's either lowercase or an uppercase. On the back end here, it's saying that you can have 2 to 3 characters. Actually, this should be 4 for back here. You see the dot here? That dot is that dot right here. So it's saying after the dot, um, the code is going to look for an alphabet or alphabets that are upper and lower case. Now, this long piece of regular expressions here, sometimes you'll get them way longer than this too. This is also a validation for an email address as well, but it's a little more detailed because email addresses do get complex on what you can actually put back here. Like I could actually, if you, those of you who know what an IP address is, I could literally put the IP address back here. Like if I was trying to send it to somebody in google.com and I knew what their email IP address was, I could put it right there. If you don't know what the IP address is, don't worry about it. That was just an example. So those are regular expressions. Again, you want to know that just to make your life easier as a developer. I do go through pieces and parts of this and how to read it, but at the end, I also teach you and show you a site or multiple sites where you can actually go to just basically cut and copy strings like this. But you got to make sure the ones you use are meeting, specifications that somebody may have given you. Again, because this will is a regular expression for email, but this is too. This is just a little more restrictive. And then there's not too much information, but there's just a couple more different methods that I want you to learn about. One being the math method, and the other one being the date methods. Form validation is what I sort of talked about that is used with the regular expressions. And then you get into the midterm. So again, if you're running out of time, pull the midterm, look at that, start going down goal 1 to goal 5. And actually, mainly just, well, yeah, goal 4 and goal 5. And that'll help you write the code that you need for goal 6. Now, the form validation and the regular expressions, that's not on the midterm. So, if anything, do the midterm first and then come back and maybe do those. Any questions?
I have a question about the dual 3 assignment.
Okay.
Is there any way you can give a hint or point me in the right direction? I have mine almost done, but when it gets to the end and there's a winner or no winner, my writing isn't in the center at the top of the screen. It almost changes font, doesn't even look bold anymore, and it goes to the far left. I don't know if
Okay.
that's something I can do with JavaScript or if that's a CSS.
You should only need to do it. You shouldn't have to change any CSS in here. So let me take a look at your code. It may be something real simple. Let's take a look at it after this, Lee, and review that at that point in
Okay.
time.
Yeah, just like that. It doesn't center.
Okay.
All right. No worries. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, miscellaneous items. Again, make sure you put console logs in your programs if you want me to, or you want us to look at your code, because what's going to happen is we're going to have to put the console logs in it anyway to troubleshoot a lot of the code that's coming up. Instead of us doing it, we need for you to do it. Only because, too, that it'll help you potentially understand where it might be breaking, as well as you can be a little more specific as to where you think the error is and what's happening at that point in time. On the grading side, make sure you keep the main assignments. In this week would be the last assignment, the midterm. Make sure you keep it out of GitHub and deliver that in the FSO side. So I might have mentioned this in week 1. Actually, I know I did. And I'm going to mention it again, that now that you guys have gone through debugging, please do not deliver anything that has an error in it when I first load the program in. So if I load your HTML in and my console log has an error in it in the console, you get an automatic 0. So make sure you take that out. You should be able to, at this point in time, you should be able to remove every error in a program. Most of them you already sort of been through on the debugging assignment, so remove them before you submit your assignments. And then name your files correctly. Make sure your naming conventions meet what's in the rubrics. Any questions? It's almost 10:15 now. I just want to respect you guys' time. If there are no questions, then I will be on till 12. If you guys have any questions, please get with me. But I appreciate you guys coming, and good luck this week. Good luck on the midterm, and keep working hard. You guys take care.